Oh dear, this can't be real. You're looking around, and everything feels like you've been here before. The same scenes you once imagined in the dark. The same dreams you whispered when nobody was listening. They're all standing here, breathing. Reality looks familiar because it's wearing the clothes of your pain. Every vision you built in frustration is finally walking the streets like it always belonged here. It's surreal, isn't it? You spoke from hurt, and the universe took notes. You remember those nights? Jaw clenched, eyes burning, mind running laps around itself. You weren't manifesting, you were venting. You weren't speaking spells, you were surviving. But somehow, every word you said in desperation became design. The universe didn't hear your tears, it heard your truth. And truth, once spoken from pain, doesn't vanish. It rearranges things, it starts building, it moves in silence until one day your heartbreak becomes your highlight reel. You didn't even notice it happening. You were too busy healing, too busy questioning if it was even worth it. Every time you said, "I just want peace," the world started deleting people who disturbed it. Every time you whispered, "I can't keep living like this," doors began closing on your old patterns. And when you said, "I just need something real," everything fake started burning away. You thought you were losing, but you were being cleared. It hits you now. This is what they meant when they said speak it into existence. They never warned you that sometimes your words would be written in tears. They never told you that the most powerful affirmations are the ones you don't mean to say. The ones that escape between breaths when you're too tired to pretend. Pain was your microphone, and the universe was listening the entire time. You spoke honesty when the world demanded filters. You confessed feelings no one wanted to hear. And the irony, that raw, unpolished truth became the foundation of your evolution. You didn't curse your life, you coded it. Every "I'm done" became divine instruction. Every "I can't" was just the blueprint for "I did." You weren't just surviving nights, you were scripting your future. Now the life standing in front of you feels familiar, not because you planned it, but because you predicted it. You can feel echoes of your own words in the air, like whispers bouncing off walls you once leaned on to cry. Everything is the same, but elevated. The pain still in the memory, but it doesn't sting anymore. It shines, because you finally understand. Those nights weren't punishment, they were prophecy. So yeah, bro, this can't be real, but it is. You built it, with words nobody believed, spoken from a soul the world ignored. You didn't just survive your pain, you published it into reality. And this is your proof. It always starts the same way, with silence that feels too loud, the kind that presses against your ribs and makes you talk just to hear something human. You didn't plan those words. They spilled out between exhaustion and surrender. Half prayer, half confession. You weren't trying to sound wise. You were trying to stay sane. The world was heavy, and your only tool was your voice. So you talked to the ceiling, to the night, to the invisible listener you hoped was real. You said things you can't even remember now, but the universe didn't forget. You thought no one heard you when you whispered, "I just want this pain to mean something." But those words didn't die in the dark. They went to work. They slipped between time and matter, planting seeds in soil you hadn't even walked on yet. You cried in one timeline and bloomed in another. That's how manifestation really moves. Not in perfect lighting and mood boards, but in raw, unfiltered truth spoken when no one's watching. You didn't wish for change, you worked for it. And that kind of sincerity rearranges everything it touches. You remember those nights? The cracked phone screen, the half-finished texts you never sent, the playlists that knew your pain before you did. You'd sit there staring at your own reflection, wondering how long it takes before something shifts. You didn't realize the shift was already happening. Every moment you spoke what you felt, instead of faking what you didn't. The world adjusted, because real words don't echo. They evolve. They move in silence, reshaping reality until your struggle becomes your story, and your story becomes a spark. You see it now in flashes. The night you said, "I can't keep doing this." The day you swore, "One day they'll understand." The quiet promise you made to yourself, "I'll never let them see me break again." Each one carved its own doorway into destiny. You weren't begging for miracles, you were building momentum. And even when you thought your voice cracked, it was just breaking into a higher frequency. Back then you couldn't see the pattern. You thought pain was random, that heartbreak was punishment. But pain is a language, and you became fluent. Every breakdown was you learning to translate chaos into clarity. Every silent night was a lecture from the universe on endurance. You didn't know it, but you were rehearsing for peace. And when you spoke, it wasn't just expression, it was creation. Now when you look back, it doesn't feel like tragedy anymore. It feels like training. You see how every why me became watch me. You realize that your tears were architects, drafting the future in ink. The world couldn't see yet. You weren't lost. You were being written. And the universe never forgets a soul that speaks in sincerity. So when people ask how you manifested all this, just smile. They wouldn't believe you if you told them the truth, that you spoke your reality from the floor, in whispers soaked in pain, in moments no one clapped for, that everything they call destiny started as a breakdown. You survived, and that's the secret. The universe doesn't listen to perfection. It listens to pain that refuses to quit. It's strange, isn't it? How the loudest changes happen in your quietest moments. Nobody saw the transformation because silence doesn't trend. While they scrolled through noise, you were downloading peace. You weren't posting about healing. You were living it, one breath at a time. Every time you went ghost, it wasn't isolation, it was incubation. You disappeared, not because you were lost, but because silence was teaching you what noise could never explain. The truth is, manifestation doesn't sound like affirmations on repeat. It sounds like surrender. It's that deep exhale when you finally stop begging and start believing. You didn't light candles or write mantras. You just stopped fighting your own timing. You let the pain breathe. And in that breath, the world started building around you. You didn't see it, but your silence was sculpting. It was rearranging your future while you were busy trying to survive the present. That's the paradox nobody talks about. When you stop trying to prove your worth, the universe starts proving it for you. You went quiet, and things started moving. You stopped explaining, and answers appeared. You stopped chasing, and alignment began. That's when you learned that silence isn't empty. It's full of construction. Every unanswered text, every night you stayed in instead of showing up, every moment you didn't react, all of it was adding bricks to your foundation. People thought you were retreating. You were regenerating. They called it avoidance. You called it awareness. You learned that energy flows where attention doesn't leak. You stopped speaking for validation and started thinking for vision. And suddenly, the world that once ignored you began orbiting around your absence. You became magnetic, not because you forced attraction, but because you mastered detachment. That's how real manifestation works, through alignment, not announcement. You didn't need to shout your dreams anymore, because you became the frequency of them. You started walking differently, lighter, slower, deliberate. You didn't have to prove growth. You radiated it. You understood that the universe doesn't respond to noise. It responds to need. And your silence was the loudest declaration of faith. Every time you chose not to explain your plan, the plan advanced. Every time you stayed still while chaos begged for your attention, destiny took another step closer. And now, looking back, it makes sense. All those seasons when nothing seemed to happen, everything was happening. Behind your stillness, entire realities were forming. Behind your solitude, strength was being coded into your DNA. That's why your peace feels different now. It's not soft, it's structured. It's not quiet, it's commanding. You learned what most people never do, that silence isn't the absence of movement. It's the presence of mastery. And while they were out there making noise, you were out here making history. You thought the pain was random, didn't you? Like some cosmic punishment for caring too much, dreaming too big, feeling too deeply. But pain was never your enemy. It was your prophecy. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every rejection carried a message written in invisible ink. It was never saying you're weak. It was whispering you're chosen. You just had to hurt long enough to hear it. You didn't understand it then. You kept asking, why me? But the real question was, why not me? Because pain doesn't pick the average. It picks the ones who can translate it. It finds the rare souls who turn suffering into scripture. You were one of them. You didn't just feel pain, you decoded it. Every time life hit you, you learned something no one could teach. You found clarity in chaos. You learned silence isn't weakness, it's signal. You realized breakdowns aren't endings, they're data. Every sleepless night was a download. Every betrayal was a briefing. Every failure was a translation. The pain wasn't destroying you, it was updating you. It was building a system that could never crash again. You just didn't know it yet. You thought you were breaking, but you were buffering. You thought you were being punished, but you were being prepared. That's how divine algorithms work. They test before they launch. And when you cried out, I can't take this anymore, the universe didn't ignore you. It said, okay, let's remove what you can't carry. That's why people disappeared. That's why places stopped feeling right. That's why you lost interest in old versions of yourself. You didn't fail. You evolved. Pain didn't delay you. It refined your frequency. It sharpened you until the world that once misunderstood you had no choice but to recognize your signal. You started realizing that pain had purpose. When you noticed the pattern, every time you fell, you came back sharper. Every time someone left, you leveled up. Every time something ended, something better began. Pain wasn't chaos, it was choreography. It taught you rhythm, patience, humility, and fire. It taught you that you can't fake resilience. It has to be earned through scars no one applauds. And now, when you look back, you don't see wounds. You see warnings that turned into wisdom. You see how pain pointed you toward power, how every tear trained your vision, how every loss recalibrated your compass. You stopped asking, "Why me?" and started saying, "Thank you," because pain showed you the real difference between surviving and awakening. You were never just hurt, you were honed. Every bruise became a blueprint. Every scar became a signature. The universe was sculpting you with the sharpest tools it had: experience and endurance. That's why people can't understand you now. They didn't study what shaped you. They think you just got lucky. But only you know the truth. You worked for this balance, and that's why your peace now feels sacred. It was bought, not borrowed. Something in you changed. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, surgical, permanent. You woke up one morning and the air felt different. People still looked the same, but the energy around them didn't touch you the way it used to. The noise that once pulled you in now sounded hollow. The games that once tempted you felt small. That was the moment your frequency shifted. It didn't come with applause. No one texted congratulations. There was no lightning bolt. No music, just stillness. But inside that stillness, everything was rewriting itself. You'd been operating at survival frequency, always reacting, defending, enduring. But suddenly, you started responding, not reacting, observing, not absorbing. You realized peace isn't what you find, it's what you decide not to lose. And in that moment, you rose above every version of you that used to chase validation. You started seeing patterns in conversations. You started noticing how people's intentions didn't match their words. You stopped matching energies and began mastering them. You didn't argue anymore. You adjusted your distance. You didn't explain anymore. You embodied the lesson. That's the power of a frequency shift. It's not about controlling others. It's about controlling your access. And when you raised your frequency, not everyone could breathe at your altitude. Some got dizzy. Some turned distant. Some called you different. And they were right. Because healing changes your dialect. Your tone carries truth now. Your silence holds weight. You don't attract drama because you've become too expensive for chaos. That's what evolution looks like. Solitude disguised as sovereignty. It's not that you became cold, you became clear. You stopped mistaking chaos for connection. You stopped calling distractions love. You stopped explaining your spirit to people committed to misunderstanding it. You finally understood. Not everyone can hear you, because not everyone has healed enough to match your frequency. And that's okay. You were never meant to stay accessible to everything you outgrew. You learned to value energy the way the rich value gold. You stopped spending it where it never multiplies. You stopped apologizing for being selective. You realized the world doesn't reward exhaustion. It rewards elevation. And you were built to rise. That's why life feels lighter now. It's not that things got easier. You just stopped resonating with resistance. You found grace in discipline, peace in boundaries, and power in letting go. You stopped chasing what isn't aligned and started magnetizing what is. That's not ego. That's energy management. That's what happens when pain graduates into purpose. And now when people look at you and say, "You've changed," you smile because they're right. You're no longer tuned to their chaos. You're broadcasting on a higher channel, one they can't decode yet. That's what they feel when you walk in. Not arrogance, not mystery. Frequency. You didn't lose yourself. You upgraded. Once your energy shifted, the world started reacting differently. Not because you changed the rules, but because you became the mirror. Every room you walk into now, you don't just enter, you reflect. People look at you and see parts of themselves they've been running from. That's why some admire you and others flinch. Your calm isn't just peace anymore. It's a spotlight. And when truth walks in wearing silence, lies start to sweat. You used to think people's reactions were about you. They never were. Your presence is a frequency check. You reveal what's real. You expose intentions without saying a word. Some feel inspired around you. They're ready to rise. Others feel irritated. They're not ready to evolve. You didn't do anything wrong. You just became a walking mirror in a world built on masks. The more aligned you became, the more distortions you started seeing. The conversations that used to excite you now sound like echoes of old patterns. The friendships that once felt close now feel crowded. You can't pretend you don't notice energy anymore. You read it. You don't need evidence. You feel vibration. Every time someone lies to you now, their tone fractures mid-sentence. Every fake smile flashes like static. That's the curse and the blessing of awareness. Once you see through illusion, you can't go back to blindness. But here's what makes it beautiful. Your light doesn't just expose, it invites. You trigger people not to shame them, but to awaken them. You remind them what truth feels like. That's why some can't stay mad at you for long. Your energy isn't aggressive, it's undeniable. You don't compete. You correct the field just by existing. You don't need validation. Your vibration does the speaking. And yes, it can be lonely. Mirrors often stand alone. You'll notice how silence follows you into spaces that used to be loud. You'll notice how people start confessing things to you they've never said out loud. They don't even know why, they just feel safe near truth. That's the hidden power of being self-aware. Your energy becomes therapy for the unhealed. You didn't ask for that role, but you earned it through endurance. Every trial you survived gave you transparency. Every heartbreak sharpened your perception. You see patterns faster now. Not because you're cynical, but because you've learned to read energy like language. You don't get fooled by charm anymore. You listen to tone. You don't believe promises anymore. You measure consistency. You stopped letting words hypnotize you. You started letting silence educate you. And when people ask, "Why does everyone act weird around you now?" you smile, because they don't get it. It's not weirdness, it's reflection. Your presence turns denial into awareness. Your energy is an emotional X-ray. You see through armor, and not everyone is ready to be seen. But the ones who are ready, they stay. They don't compete with your light, they grow beside it. That's how your new circle forms. not through attention, but through alignment. You no longer chase connection, you attract resonance. And that's why every space you enter adjusts. When you shifted your energy, the universe didn't just notice, it responded. The field around you started to bend. Doors that were sealed tight began to loosen. Paths that didn't exist started sketching themselves beneath your feet. That's what true power feels like. Not control, but command. You don't chase outcomes anymore. You align your frequency and let reality rearrange itself around you. That's the echo of power, when your very existence becomes instruction to the world. People feel it even when you're silent. They can't explain it, but they sense the calibration. You're not louder, you're lighter. You walk in and conversations reroute, emotions settle, tension breaks. Your energy became the algorithm, and everything else is adjusting to match. That's why life feels synchronistic now. Things happen right when you need them to. People show up at perfect timing. It's not coincidence, it's coherence. You're finally vibrating in harmony with your purpose. That's why the old world couldn't hold you anymore. You outgrew timelines built for hesitation. You don't move by fear now. You move by instinct. That's evolution. The you that once begged for clarity now creates it. You don't ask what if anymore. You ask why not. You stopped praying for signs because you became one. Every step you take sends signals through dimensions, rearranging outcomes before you even get there. That's not fantasy, that's frequency. And yeah, it confuses people. They see your glow but can't trace the source. They think you're lucky, but you know better. Luck is just preparation syncing with divine timing. You didn't stumble into power, you endured into it. Every moment of uncertainty, every heartbreak, every night you questioned your worth, all of it built you. All of it built the calibration you're operating on now. You were forged, not found. And when people try to pull you back, it doesn't work anymore. You've gone quantum. You can't fit into rooms where gossip outweighs growth. You can't play small in circles built on survival. You can't fake connection with souls still addicted to chaos. You move too clean now. Your energy is too expensive for cheap exchanges. You're not running from anyone, they just can't afford your presence anymore. The echo of your power travels further than your name. People who've never met you feel it in their bones. They call it intuition. They call it coincidence. You outgrew the version of yourself that needed to be understood. You're not chasing light anymore. You are the light, and that scares the ones still hiding in the dark. So let them stare, let them talk, let them wonder how you pulled it off. They'll say it was luck, timing, coincidence, but you'll know the truth. It was alignment, faith, and inner fire. You didn't become who you are by accident. You became it by design. Every heartbreak, every delay, every lonely night was part of the architecture. And now, standing here, calm, clear, untouchable, you finally see it. The universe didn't just notice your shift, it crowned it.